Hmm.
Alrighty, I think we are live. What's going on, everybody? This is Chinese Wrestling Sit Down, where we sit down with wrestlers and personalities from within and out of China. We get a more in-depth look into who they are and their unique stories that made them become prime candidates as our focus features of Chinese Wrestling Sit Down. I am Leung, of course. I am back once again with another Chinese Wrestling Sit Down, and my guest today is from all the way from Korea. He is Shiho from Pro Wrestling Society. He is the promoter and head trainer. How you doing, man?
Hey, man. Very good. Thank you for having me. 11 p.m. by the way here.
11 p.m.
Quite late night, but I'm quite fine.
Do people in Korea stay up pretty late, I guess, or?
Oh yeah, we work hard. We work late, so that's pretty normal for us. Yeah, no problem.
Just like people in China and Hong Kong, from where I'm from, anyways. Yeah, they stay up pretty late. So actually, I think I am getting a bit of an echo. If you could put on headphones.
Oh, okay. Let me see.
Yeah.
Like, what about now? Like, can you hear me better? Like,
I think
like,
I think when I talk, there might be a bit of an echo, but
I mean, for me, I can hear you loud and clear, so I think it's okay for me.
Okay, let's roll with it then. Okay, so wrestling in Korea, yeah. Like once again, like I learned so much from these interviews. Like I actually don't know. I guess I say this a lot too. Like I don't know too much about wrestling in Korea. So what is it like? What's the wrestling scene like? And give us a brief history of Korea wrestling. Well, South Korea more specifically.
Oh man, like when you want me to like summarize the South Korean pro wrestling history, like to be honest, it's gonna get long because not many people know, but South Korean pro wrestling used to be very prestigious. It used to be very in big scale, such as like Japan. So to be short, from 60 to 90, like it had that scene that is like a same size of Japan, like almost like Korea is actually surprisingly one of the major pro wrestling country in the world. Like they had like this gigantic dome, like filling all the dome with the sold out crowd. Before baseball, soccer, all of that sports came into Korea. Before all of that, pro wrestling was this national sports where everybody gathered up on this television and they watched this our hero, like our Korean, like first generation Korean wrestler beating Antonio Inoki, all those like big Japanese wrestler. And 2000, like lots of complicated reason, but it just went down, like downward spiral. The market died. Nobody watched pro wrestling. Pro wrestling became one of this paragon of nostalgia. You know, nobody watch it anymore. Everybody just consider it nostalgia. And around like 2000, there was like big boom about this Western pro wrestling, WWE. So while Korean wrestling was dying, everybody started getting familiar with the pro wrestling in the North America, like WWE, like WCW, through the local television. But the Korean pro wrestling has been being forgotten over and over, and nobody just remembered it until starting 2010. This young pro wrestlers, they started making a movement. They started making some small promotion, like mine, PWS, PLA, PWF, and all of those indie promotions had their ups and downs. And so to be short, like it used to be big, now it's dead, but still the passion is alive, and many young promotion, including PWS, is try to revive the torch so we can go back to that glorious day. So unlike other countries, like for me, I think like China or any like Southern Asia, like Southeastern Asia, like for those countries, I think pro wrestling is like new culture for them, maybe starting from the 2000. But in Korea, it used to be big from 60, and it have a very long history. But I think we have this disconnection between our older generation and our younger generation. We really don't have any interaction, and we don't know what those older generation wrestlers doing these days. So yeah. That would be a
Wow.
brief history.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, it's something I didn't know myself. So would you say the older generation, like,
Mhm.
are a lot of them still around or
Like all
to
of
pass
them
down the knowledge?
usually passed away.
That's right. Oh, okay.
Recently, like recently, one of the most famous Korean wrestler, Leung, the most well-known national Korean wrestler, who was like over 50 years old. He passed away,
Hmm.
and he was the probably the last Korean pro wrestler that was like nationally well known. And when you talk about PWS, our case, I really don't have those connection with those old generation wrestlers. I met some of them. I met some of those old people who were known as a legend. For that case, I met them, but it's not that they really didn't like pass some knowledge to us. They really didn't support us financially, or there was no um, carrying like those old generation carrying younger generation and passing the torch. No, like everything was devastated by this older generation, and this young bloods are rising out of nothing. Luckily, we had that middle generation, like the few wrestler who actually have a connection between older generation and new generation. So, like, let's say one of the most representing wrestler about that kind of middle generation would be the guy called Joe Kyung Ho. He's a former PWS champion, and he's also my trainer. He taught me everything about pro wrestling.
Hmm.
So he is one of the few wrestler middle of 30s, like 34, 35 years old, and he's not like totally young, but he's not also too old. So he actually connects, and he has experience of working with those older generation that I've never worked before. So they have that kind of connection. And so he usually the one who taught me all that pro wrestling that I couldn't learn from those older generation. So yeah.
Oh, it's good to have them around for sure. So was
Oh yeah.
is Japanese wrestling more popular in South Korea or is it American style?
No, not American style definitely. Like
American style.
Japanese pro wrestling is known as like only few people like who like want to truly enjoy the wrestling, those more core fan. Like we have a strong image that only core fan watch Japanese pro wrestling. Recently NJPW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, they actually opened the one of their channel through the Korean local television. So
Hmm.
I think they tried to make a move to make it more major.
Okay.
Um, but still, when you ask like 90% of Korean, and when you ask random Korean, like, hey, do you know about wrestling? Do you know about pro wrestling? They would just say, oh, you mean like the John Cena, Goldberg, but they wouldn't talk about like Tanahashi or Okada, Kazuchika.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's the usual concept. I'm sure pretty much it's the same with everywhere.
Okay. So New Japan is on TV over there. How about
Yeah.
WWE? Is there any other promotions that's on TV in Korea?
Oh yeah. IB Sports. We always had that local television that had a contract with WWE, and WWE provide the right to broadcast. And actually, my trainer Jo Kyung Ho, he's the commentator for the Raw in Korean channel. So
Okay. Wow.
the, yeah.
Nice. So are there any other international shows that would tour Korea? Like WWE, have
So
they ever come there or
yeah,
New
yeah, yeah.
Japan?
Several times. So WWE
Oh,
actually came to Korea in 2002. As I remember, they came like two times, like
oh,
2002 and around like 2007. But after that, they never came. They make a bunch of tour to Japan, but
hmm,
they really didn't come. In Korea, like I said, older generation, like who usually had this fame, like some older generation wrestler who had a connection with WWE or like New Japan, when actually those WWE came to Korea, WWE actually invited those older Korean wrestler to their like front seat, and actually The Rock at the time made a visit. of that one of the legendary wrestler in Korea called Oki Kintaro. So that's his Japanese name, but in Korean he's known as a Kim Il. He's the most well-known Korean wrestler in Korean history. Um, and those WWE wrestlers actually visit him to pay a homage and to pay respect. And besides WWE, TNA, no, actually NWA came to Korea one time. I think that was like 2004. I remember that time, like Scott Hall, the Sting, the DDP, like all those kind of people
Oh,
actually
really?
came to Korea. Yep.
Wow.
So because it's very few times, like all of our wrestling fan, they remember those time, like, because at the time the popularity of WWE was huge in Korea.
Yeah, there's also a Collision in Korea back in the day, but that's North Korea, right? Back in
Yeah,
'95.
that's such a myth. Like I don't think there's nobody who actually knows the story about that collision in North Korea. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard stories about that, but still to this day the largest wrestling crowd in history in the world, apparently. But
Yeah, which was kind of artificial, which was like forced to
yeah, because
participate. It's North Korea. Classic.
yeah. All right, we are live with Shiho here. Make sure you guys send in your questions on Facebook and YouTube, and we're going to go through that pretty soon.
Oh
So,
boy. Okay.
another question for you here. So, how'd you get started in pro wrestling, and what? Yeah, sorry, that was a question.
Oh yeah. Okay.
How'd you get started in pro wrestling?
2010, like really skinny guy, uh, who really don't know about pro wrestling, and I actually had a chance to be in some like local indie pro wrestling in Korea called PLA, Professional Live Action. Not active anymore, and it was like really indie show, like small crowds, like as usual. And this one dude, like one guy going to the top rope, and he's like chanting his name like RVD and doing some like flipping shit. And yeah, like I know about pro wrestling and I was a big fan of WWE, but it was my first time to actually watch pro wrestling show live. And I thought it was amazing. And after the show, I just went to the locker room and I just asked those wrestlers like, "Hey, you don't need to train me. I'm not athletic. I'm too skinny to be a wrestler, but I speak English. So maybe I can help you guys with the translation. If you guys are looking for some potential foreign wrestler in Korea, I can translate for you guys." So that's how I started my career in wrestling business. And then they actually asked me like, if you want Shiho, you can start rolling. You can try to take a bump. We'll teach you. So I just tried to start it kind of casually. I never expected I could be a wrestler. And turned out I found it like it really fit me. Like I really liked the art inside the pro wrestling. I loved all the secret theory, the all the science, and that hooked me up. And I trained really, really hard. After 1 year, I made some debut in the indie wrestling scene, and that's how I started. It was not easy. My biggest challenge was like taking bump from the second rope, and even like taking bump was so scary for me, and it hurts so much. But once you actually reach to a certain level, just confidence keep growing and growing. So yeah, that's my history. That's how I started.
Well, you're a skinny kid no more, right? So,
Well, I still consider myself one of the lean guy in South Korea, and I want to get huge. I want to get more muscle. But yeah, compared to 10 years ago, I gained like 15 kilogram. I gained more muscle. I'm way more athletic compared to those times, and yeah, I was always like shamed about my body. I thought it was really not professional, so I had to put lots of effort. Like I was really, really skinny.
so how long has it been since you opened up PWS, and what has your experience been so far with that promotion?
I made PWS 2018, and from 2010 to 2018, if those 8 years was series of experience as a pro wrestler, from 2018 to 2020 as a promoter of the PWS, I'm experiencing many things in terms of promotion, booking, producing, and the business. So I'm learning way more than I learned this past 8 years. Um, so now I'm a producer. Now I'm a like promoter. So like the first of all, responsibility is heavy, and actually got really I realized that I really don't have the time that I can focus on my personal wrestling skill, because I have to like take care of so many things like business, booking, media, and all of that. But in other hand, it means like I'm learning all of those different sides of wrestling, you know? So 2018, 2020, I'm learning business, not just wrestling. I'm learning wrestling business, like relationship with the wrestlers, the concept and the culture of wrestling in different countries. Um, how do you like what is the most efficient way to draw attention to the people? What is the best way to designate the role to different people in my company? Like we have many people playing different role in my company. Like I'm not doing everything. Um, I'm only like kind of supervising the whole picture, but I realize it's better to designate the job to every people who have different skill and expertise. So yeah, that's I can say those are the things that I'm learning these days.
Yeah, it's always a good idea to know the behind the scenes of wrestling, and yeah, delegating tasks of course is important because you can't do everything yourself. So a lot of wrestling organizations are running shows with no audience and focusing more on the studio style, the studio
Mhm.
feel, just like MKW. Is PWS doing anything like that this year or next
Yeah,
year? I guess.
since this year April, we like luckily in our case we had our gym. Like we had our ring, we have our gym, which can be like solid stability, and we kind of decorated the gym like in a studio vibe. And then we started throwing the show, doing lots of taping, lots of YouTube streaming without audience. Like if the COVID seems like going slow and low, then we invite like some people with limits. But um, right now, because the COVID situation is getting a little bit more serious in Korea,
Was it
so we are doing non-crowd show for a while.
awesome?
Mm.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, probably 2020 is canceled for now. I feel. Hopefully next year.
You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the best thing for every promoter and wrestler these days is just being flexible as much as possible, adapting the situation, accepting the situation, and just, you know, looking like doing our best, what we can do in this kind of situation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we are live here on MKW's Facebook and YouTube. We are taking questions live here. All right, let's see what we have here. Aaron says, "Good morning, Shiho." What's going on,
Hey,
Aaron?
it's good evening here.
Aaron asks, "Who is your favorite opponent that you've wrestled, and who would be the most that you would want to wrestle someday?
Hmm.
Who's your
Um,
favorite, and who would you want to wrestle?"
okay. Favorite a lot. Like okay, there can be many different aspects about favorite. Like what is favorite? Like did I like the match that I enjoyed the most, or the match that I feel I learned the most? And I'll try to approach in a way that I feel I learned a lot through the match. And the match would be with the current NWA TV champion, Ziki Dice.
Oh, Zicky
Uh,
Dice.
yeah, he once came to Korea and he had a match with me, and through that one match, like after the match is over, everybody, like my trainer, Brian Leo, Joe Kyung Ho, everybody came to me and they said, "Well, you got carried. Like Shiho, this time you had a match with someone like way higher level than you.
Hmm.
Um, his like the control, like his way of controlling the flow, his way of controlling the crowds, the timing, his delivery." while I was doing match, he actually like gave me all the instruction and direction, and whatever he says, I just followed it. And somehow the crowds went crazy, and that was the most entertaining match I ever had. One of the most entertaining match I ever done. And yeah, so in that way, after that, I had totally different aspect about pro wrestling. Like it's not about just skill, it's about how to control the crowds, how to interact with the crowds, and how to focus on the detail, how to work the camera. And those subtle, small differences make huge difference in wrestling match. It like when you go to the top rope, the timing of the going to the top rope, the timing of um, interact with the fans, that small timing, you can just learn that with the theory. You have to be in actual match. You have to learn through the experience. And in that sense, he taught me so many stuff. So I would say that is one of my favorite match. I mean, I have like tons of favorite match with my match with Brian Leo, Joe Kyung Ho, of course, and with the Zombie Dragon from MKW. Also, but when you ask me about like the match that I had the most emotion, it was with the current PWS champion Brian Leo. Um, it was no disqualification match, and it was also my first time that I had to put somebody into the table, and we had a lot of build up with that guy. He is the most devastating and the best wrestler in PWS right now. Uh, the student of Harley Race, quite veteran from the States, and he and I had this like feud for a month, and in Korea, like it's really hard to see that kind of like well written story. Like like before us, we didn't have like actual solid story. We didn't have like that various character. So it was kind of like our first try that we build up the story and people actually get immersed by that. And we built up really well, and people went crazy. Like people really hated Brian Leo, and people really cheered me on. And the people's reaction, and he's a very physical guy, so I had to put my everything for the match. And when I gave him drop kick, the triangle drop kick, and when he got that, and when he took a bump to the table, like that was like one of the first time that Korean pro wrestling this that demonstrate this the table spot to the Korean crowd on a live show, and people went nuts. Like people chanted like they're some kind of ECW fans, and it just made me really emotional and really happy. Yeah, I'll just say those two matches for now because I have too many, and my story might be too long. Yeah.
Yeah, Zicky Dai is quite a talent, and yeah, he knows how to carry a
Oh
match.
yeah.
Is there any way to watch those two matches anywhere? Is it on YouTube?
Oh yeah. You can definitely watch our my match with Brian Leo and my match with Zicky Dice in our official Pro Wrestling Society YouTube channel. Just go to the YouTube and type Pro Wrestling Society, then you will find us really easily.
Awesome. And the second part to his question: who would you want to wrestle?
Oh
Anybody you
shit,
want.
yeah. Tajiri.
Sorry, Tajiri, you said?
Japanese Basso Tajiri.
Oh, Tajiri. Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
Like all like my wrestling and my wrestling style, I really try to embody his style. Um, I really appreciate his commitment to his character and all the pavement that he did in WWE. Um, yeah, like I was fascinated by that man. Like the first time he debuted on WWE, yeah, like his style, and I feel like I can learn so many things from that person, from that wrestler. And for my personal level, I think it should be the Big Red Machine Kane. Like my side as my mark side, as a pro wrestling fan, I would say it's Kane.
The
And
mayor.
yeah, the Mayor Kane. Yeah, I would totally ask him to put me like give me some choke slam to the table. I don't care. I would totally take it. That would be my dream.
Hopefully not setting you on fire, but
Oh, I'll take it. That would be my honor.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Is there any more questions for my PA here? Next question. All right, disappeared there. Oh yeah, from the boss himself.
Oh, okay.
Have any of the old generation of Korean wrestling been to the new generation of wrestling shows? What do they think of what you guys are doing?
Oh, sensitive. So we are having relation. We okay. So there is one promotion that actually uphold that old generation history. It's called WWA. If you guys fan of Chinese pro wrestling, if you know Chinese pro wrestling, you know the guy called Slam, right? The father of Chinese pro wrestling. His name
Oh,
was
sorry,
what was his
Slam. You mean
name? Yeah, Slam.
the Slam? Slam.
The
I heard something
yeah,
different. Yeah, the Slam.
okay, the Slam, father of pro wrestling. He started his wrestling career in WWA in South
Hmm.
Korea actually. So he learned
Okay.
the pro wrestling from South Korea, and so this promotion called WWA, they have this relationship. They have this whole history. Like they are the one who uphold the legacy. But unfortunately, they're not really active anymore. They do the show like once a year, so it's not really relevant. They have a size. They have a size. They have the fund, the finance, or the connection with all the politicians. But they're not relevant anymore. Like not super active. Like once a year, twice a year, and we kind of help them out with our talent, with our because we have young bloods. In that promotion, they don't. Unfortunately, they have only 3 or 4 wrestlers, and their average age is over like 40 years old, 50 years old. So it's kind of hard for them to do their show without uh, like overseas talents or young talents from PWS or something. Um, but we try to be respectful as much as we can with WWA. Like because they came to our show several times, and one of their champion actually came to our show, and we actually booked him, and he had some pretty good match several times. Um, of course, like when it comes to when young generation is going really active, and when we start getting good press, it's natural for people to think that the old generation might try to press us down or try to be jealous or something. And to be honest, like it's not that I never thought about it, but Korean pro wrestling is very small. Our market is totally dead, and only few people enjoy our show. So I think there's no point that we try to have some bad relationship with those older generation. So in my case, I'm a very diplomatic person, and I try to make some diplomatic bridge with those older generation. I wouldn't say there was no heat. Like this between older generation and younger generation, we have some like subtle heat existing because like for us, our perception of to our older Korean pro wrestling generation, our usual perception is like, you guys have done anything for us. You guys didn't pave the road. You guys actually ruined the road. So now we're reviving. So, we don't owe anything to you guys. We are not your senpai. We are not your senior. We are not your junior. We are not your student. We even didn't learn pro wrestling from you guys. So, like, I I would put that in rebellious way, but this might be a little bit exaggeration, and they might think differently. They might think we might be condescending or arrogant or not respecting the legacy. But we don't know what's in their mind, and I want to be diplomatic as much as possible. And thing can be sensitive time by time between them and us. So right now, whenever we have some chance to work with us, we try to be respectful as much as possible. If there's some heat, I try to mediate as much as possible. Yeah. Okay. So conclusion: the market is small. No point for us to fight. So quite complicated, right?
A little bit, but I think I get the gist of it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about MKW. you were working with in China with MKW, and you were part of the initial Belt and Road Championship tournament.
Oh man, yeah,
I
very
called
fun
those
match.
matches, by the way. I
Oh
called those
really?
matches, yeah. And then
Okay, hope you enjoyed it.
tell me how did it go, or how your experiences and how did it went with MKW? Now that back then you were representing South Korea for the Belt and Road Championship tournament.
Yeah, like I couldn't believe it. Like I at the time, like even right now, I still consider myself like super green. And that time, like I was like pro wrestling baby. I didn't know anything about like lots of art of pro wrestling. And somehow, Adrian, the promoter of MKW, he saw potential in me, and he gave me a chance. And at that time, I had some like schedule overlapping with my Korean promotion, so I thought like maybe I cannot go there. So I was really hesitant. I was kind of afraid. I was worried that I might, ruin everything. But Adrian actually kind of pushed me. Like he gave me some good push. Like hey Shio, like don't miss this opportunity. Just go ahead. And that kind of encouraged me. And I went there, and they gave me this Korean flag before I go to the ring, and I had to like wave it while I'm doing entrance. And actually that felt awesome. Like representing Korea, like while I consider myself not the best, but still having the opportunity that I can represent my country for the first time in international tournament. That was like I've never experienced that before. So yeah, that made me feel like, gosh, this is why I love wrestling. So yeah, and
Since
my yeah, no, please go ahead.
yeah, so since then, PWS has been collaborating with MKW, has done a lot of work with Middle Kingdom Wrestling, basically exchanging wrestlers, and I believe they had a collaboration show in South Korea. Any fond experiences or stories from there?
Well, lots of parties with MKW guys. Yeah, I'll tell you, like many people in PWS, we're kind of like nerds. We like party. And I have to say, those MKW guys, like there are some party people, and they were the most entertaining people. I really enjoyed hanging out with them. Besides the ring, but so those of stuffs are the thing that I really enjoyed. But in the ring, um, yeah, like working with the people from different promotion with different style. Um, I had a match with the stable, and I kind of expected it's going to be physical because they're way bigger guys than me, and I saw their matches, and I'm like, okay, it's going to be quite physical. So I was kind of mentally prepared. But when I actually do the match, it was way more physical than I thought. So I had to like be more bitter. I had to be more serious. Um, and this collaboration between, so when two promotions like collides, like it was also one of the first thing that Korean audiences are not familiar with. So they were really excited. They actually really hated the people from NKW, except Michael Su and John and Lee. They really hated the stable.
Most people do.
Yeah, one of the stable. And yeah, had to I'm sorry, my dog is barking. Just
No worries.
yeah, this is my
Cute.
Stuart Junior. Okay, so yeah, we had to greet our guests from the China, and people like went crazy. I think they did really good job. Bring the heat, make Korean audiences to hate them. Um, we exchanged lots of knowledge to each other. They're like they could like the guy like Michael Su and John and Lee, they could actually teach us something that we don't know. And like the stable kind of taught me about the importance of entertainment and the strong character. So those were very interesting experience. And working with the Zeta Zhang, the one of the most the regular wrestler in MKW as well. Um, Yeah, like working in NXT and WWE, she also brought lots of experience. I had a match with her, and also at the same time, I learned a lot from her. So yeah, experience-wise, it was amazing. The crowd went crazy. And after the show, like lots of party with those guys. And yeah, like one of the reason I still want to go back to MKW and have a good match with them is because they have awesome after party.
Is soju cheaper than water over there in South Korea?
Oh yeah, soju. I don't drink soju. Like I'm not good at that. I'm really, really lightweight.
Lightweight.
Um, yeah.
Not a true Korean then. No, I'm just kidding, of course.
Oh yeah, that's a stereotype. Come on. Like everybody asks me like about, hey Shiho, why you're not doing a K-pop wrestler? And yeah, and then they ask
BTS.
me like, yeah, and they ask me like how many soju I can drink, and I'm like, I'm not good at StarCraft, and I
Mhm.
cannot drink soju well. I drink wine.
There you go. Classy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Poshy, I would say.
Flashy. All right. So, yeah, thank you everybody for watching MKW Chinese Wrestling Sit Down. Any social media pages you want to plug?
Oh yeah, you guys should definitely check facebook.com Society Wrestling.
There you
And
go on the screen.
right now, because of the COVID, we are really, really focusing on our YouTube. We have this the story, like we have lots of story building up in Korean pro wrestling. If you want to know about our story, we have currently the season 4 is upcoming, and you can watch our show from the season 1, and it's amazing. You have to see it. Like you will be surprised. There's this kind of pro wrestling in South Korea. Go to the YouTube and just type Pro Wrestling Society. So youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Society, and you will find us easily. And if you want to check out my Instagram, just say Shiho HONG. Shiho Hong. SHIHO HONG. And you will see
George.
all the action of the Red Fox of the Korea.
Awesome. And if you like me, make sure you follow me on Twitter.
Yeah,
I
follow
am
that guy. Follow
at Al
L.
Leung. There you go. Thank
Mhm.
you. And make sure you guys follow us on MKW social media. Facebook, Instagram is MKW China. Twitter is MKW Wrestling. I always get that wrong. And YouTube is Middle Kingdom Wrestling. And I believe our Facebook page is about a bit over 23,000 likes and follows. So yeah, make sure you guys check us out if you haven't already. Just want to see if there's any more questions from our PA because we're about to wrap up here. From Chairman Al himself, Chairman Al and the stable definitely are coming back for more destruction.
Well, he has to remember that he got kicked in the face by our champion that time. So if we want to get kicked again, always welcome.
There you go. You're welcome to be kicked again at Chairman Al.
Yeah, after you get kicked, this time I'll put you in some like soul tour. Like last time I couldn't do it, but next time I'll do it for you.
There you go, Chairman Al.
Love
Watch
you,
out.
Chairman. Yeah.
All right. Any more questions? Aaron asked, "Will you be appearing at MKW Blastoff?"
Well, I mean, only if the traveling is allowed. Actually, I'm even out of my own show because of my day job. My actually movement to other city is kind of prohibited. So except for me, all of my PWS wrestlers are having show in the PWS. But right now, I even cannot go to the convenience store around my house.
Oh,
But
wow.
if I have a chance, the MKW Blast stuff looks amazing, and I think it's very brilliant. So I definitely want to be there, and I definitely want to have match with all those good wrestlers.
All right, awesome. All right, I think that's all the questions we have. Thank you for all the questions there. And yeah, we're gonna wrap up here. But so you're arguably the most accomplished and well-traveled wrestler from South Korea today. And all the people you've worked with and you met in the business so far, who would you say inspired you the most to take PWS and South Korean wrestling to the next level? Who inspired
Cool.
you?
I would say it's my trainers, Jo Kyung Ho, like one of the active Korean pro wrestler, and the Brian Leo, also my trainer, and also now my like the bitter enemy. Um, yeah, the student of Harley Race. like those two guys actually built me up. Like without them, I wouldn't build the PWS right now. Without them, no Shiho, no PWS. Um, I was like, when I learned wrestling, I was kind of Mark. I was like, the so-called spot monkey, all about just flipping around. And these guys actually redesigned me, like in terms of the psychology, the skill, the mindset, everything. Like, so yeah, I would say those people are the one who inspired me the most to build the PWS. So I'm very grateful for them.
Awesome. Thank you to them. And thank you. Oh, there's one more question from DJM. Have you ever wrestled outside of Korea? Well, obviously for MKW. So other than China, MKW, have you wrestled anywhere else?
China, MKW, America, the Florida. I was in the Brainbuster Pro Wrestling. And number 3, I was in Japan. I was in Japan, Nara, and I was in Osaka, Dotonbori Pro Wrestling. And I was in Taiwan with a Taiwan called NTW, New Taiwan Pro Wrestling. And I didn't have a match there, but that time I trained with those Taiwanese wrestlers. They're amazing. You should check it out too. So, yeah, I wrestle in 4 countries. And once the COVID is over, I'm trying to expand my experience more over and over. Like, I'm busy as a promoter, and I've been really lazy to build myself as a wrestler. But once COVID is over, I want to be more greedy. I want to learn more as much as possible in different countries. And right now, my goal is going to Japan and lots of those Southeast Asia countries. Philippines, Singapore.
Awesome. All right, Shiho, I believe that's all that we have. All the time we have for this episode of Chinese Wrestling Sit Down. Thank you, everybody, for your comments and questions. Thank you for watching live on MKW's Facebook and YouTube. And thank you, Shiho, for taking the time to chat with me today here on Chinese Wrestling Sit Down. And yeah, we'll see you in a few weeks for another episode. Yeah. And have a good day and night, depending where you are. Okay?
You have a good evening.
All right. See you guys.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.